I've spent years building what I thought was a perfect life. My wife Katie and my best friend Max were my world. Together, we laughed, shared stories, and created countless memories. Everyone around us often remarked on our seemingly flawless bond, and for a long time, I believed in that illusion wholeheartedly. But lately, an unsettling feeling has begun to creep into my thoughts. I can't shake this sense that something isn't right. I notice small changes in Katie's behavior that I can't quite place, little shifts that feel out of character for her. At first, it was the late nights at work. Katie has always been dedicated, but now it seems like her commitment to her job is consuming her. I remember when she would rush home to share her day with me, excited to recount every detail. But those days have dwindled. More often than not, she arrives home late, her eyes weary and distant. The light that used to sparkle in her gaze feels dimmed, as if she's carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. Then there are the moments when she disappears into the bathroom for what feels like an eternity. I find myself glancing at the clock, counting the minutes. 10 minutes turn into 20, and each tick of the clock feels like a small eternity. I try to convince myself it's nothing, just her being preoccupied with something personal, but a nagging voice whispers otherwise. Katie also seems less attentive lately. Conversations that once flowed effortlessly now feel forced and awkward. When I share my day or my thoughts, I can see her mind drifting, her eyes glazing over. I miss her engagement, her spark. I used to feel like her world revolved around us, but now it's as if she's somewhere else entirely. The distance between us has grown, and it leaves a pit in my stomach. Max, too, has become an enigma. He's still around, but I sense a subtle shift in his demeanor. He checks his phone frequently during our hangouts, often chuckling at messages I can't see. I can't help but wonder if he's texting Katie, sharing jokes or secrets that leave me out of the loop. I tell myself I'm being irrational, but doubt lingers like a shadow. As the days pass, my suspicions grow. I find myself replaying moments in my head, searching for signs that confirm my fears. I never wanted to be that guy, jealous, paranoid, and insecure. But the more I think about it, the more I feel like I'm losing her, like our once unbreakable bond is starting to fray at the edges. Every time I see Katie, I'm struck by the contrast between who she was and who she seems to be now. I want to confront her, to ask her what's going on, but I fear the answer. What if my suspicions are right? What if I'm not just overreacting, but instead facing a harsh reality I'm not ready to accept? I feel trapped in this cycle of uncertainty. Each day drags on, and the weight of my suspicions grows heavier. I desperately want to believe that everything is okay, that this is just a rough patch in our otherwise perfect life. But with each passing moment, I can't shake the feeling that I'm standing on the edge of a precipice, ready to tumble into darkness I can't even begin to fathom. It was a Thursday afternoon, and for once, I managed to leave the office early. The day had been long, filled with meetings that dragged on longer than they should have, but the prospect of returning home to Katie put a spring in my step. I envisioned us curling up on the couch, sharing a bottle of wine, and catching up on our favorite show. Little did I know that what awaited me would shatter that vision and change everything. As I turned the key in the lock, I felt a familiar sense of comfort wash over me. The warm, inviting aroma of dinner wafted through the air, but something felt slightly off. I called out to Katie, but there was no response. Maybe she was in the shower or busy in the kitchen, but as I stepped further inside, the silence felt unnerving. I walked down the hallway, glancing into the living room. That's when I saw them. My heart dropped into my stomach. There, on the couch, sat Katie and Max, both laughing as if they were sharing some inside joke that excluded me. It was innocent at first glance, but the way they leaned toward each other made my skin crawl. Their faces were close, too close, and as I stood frozen in the doorway, I could feel a storm brewing inside me. I didn't want to believe what I was seeing, but the familiar pang of doubt and anxiety surged within me, growing more intense with each passing second. I shifted my weight, trying to make my presence known, but instead of turning to greet me, they both continued to laugh, seemingly lost in their world. "Hey!" I finally managed to call out, my voice unsteady, betraying the turmoil churning inside me. They snapped their heads toward me, surprise flashing across their faces. "Alex, you're home early," Katie exclaimed, her smile too bright, too forced. I noticed her cheeks were flushed, and for a moment, the laughter faded as if it had never happened. "Yeah," I replied, my heart racing. "I just thought I'd surprise you." My eyes flickered between Katie and Max, searching for any hint of guilt, but all I found was a tense silence hanging in the air. Katie stood up, brushing off her jeans, as if the very act of rising from the couch could dispel the tension. We were just talking about some old college stories," she said, her voice slightly shaky. Max chimed in too quickly. "Yeah, you know how it is, just reminiscing." He gave a laugh, but it felt hollow, lacking the ease it should have had. I could see the awkwardness in his posture, the way he shifted from foot to foot, as if he too could feel the weight of my gaze. But I didn't want to hear about college stories. The scene played over in my mind, each detail sharp and cutting. I remembered the late nights, the laughter, and the connection we all shared, and now it felt tainted. Had this been going on for a while? Had I been so oblivious? "Right," I said slowly, my voice low and controlled despite the chaos in my head. "I didn't realize you two were so close." I aimed a comment at both of them, but my eyes remained locked on Katie, searching for a sign of truth, a flicker of honesty. She faltered for a moment, her smile faltering as she processed my words. "It's just friendly banter, Alex. You know how we are," she said, trying to reassure me, but I could hear the cracks forming in her voice. I forced a smile, but inside, I was spiraling. All the signs I had ignored, all the feelings I had brushed aside, suddenly crashed over me like a tidal wave. I felt as if the ground beneath me was giving way. The laughter, the closeness, they had been right in front of me, and I had been too trusting, too blind to see it. "Why don't we just sit down and talk?" I suggested, trying to keep my tone casual, but my heart raced in my chest. I needed to understand what was happening, to hear their explanations no matter how painful they might be. "Sure, let's sit down," Katie replied, but I could see her demeanor shift. The carefree spirit I knew so well seemed to dim, and I could almost feel the tension thickening in the air around us. We moved to the dining room table, and I could feel the weight of their gazes on me. I wanted to demand answers, to shake them until the truth spilled out, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I sat down, forcing myself to breathe deeply, to regain some semblance of control. As we sat there in an uncomfortable silence, I felt the room shrink around me. I looked at Katie, hoping to find solace in her eyes, but all I saw was apprehension. Max fidgeted in his chair, avoiding my gaze as if he were afraid of what might happen next. The moment hung heavily in the air, charged with unsaid words and unasked questions. I knew I couldn't avoid it any longer. The truth was waiting, lurking just beneath the surface, and I was determined to uncover it, no matter the cost. Deciding to install the hidden camera was a moment fraught with internal conflict. It was the kind of choice that gnawed at my conscience, a stark departure from the values I had lived by. I had always believed in trust and open communication, but those principles now felt like fragile glass, shattered by the weight of my suspicions. I was stepping into a moral gray area, and I knew it. Yet, the need for clarity, the desperate urge to unearth the truth, pushed me to take this drastic measure. After setting up the camera, I was consumed by a mixture of anticipation and dread. Each day felt like an eternity, with every passing moment heightening my anxiety. I found myself replaying conversations in my head, questioning every interaction I had observed between Katie and Max. Had I misread the signs? Was I truly losing my mind? It felt unbearable to remain in limbo, trapped between suspicion and trust. When the weekend finally arrived, I sat at my desk, staring at my laptop, ready to dive into the recordings. The air was thick with tension as I opened the camera app, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew what I might see, but the weight of uncertainty made it impossible to turn back. I needed to confront the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The first few recordings were mundane, capturing everyday life, Katie waking up, brewing coffee, and getting ready for work. I watched her movements with a keen eye, looking for any sign of deception. But at first, all I saw was the woman I loved, going about her daily routine. The footage felt oddly comforting, and for a brief moment I questioned my suspicions. Maybe I had been too hasty, too quick to judge. But as I continued to scroll through the recordings, I noticed something different about the later clips. The atmosphere in the room shifted. It was evident that Katie had a lightness to her, a giddy excitement that I hadn't seen in a long time. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach as I began to realize that my worst fears were about to unfold before my eyes. Then it happened. The footage captured a day when Katie came home early, her laughter echoing through the house like music. I watched in disbelief as she and Max entered the living room together, their bodies angled toward one another in a way that felt too intimate. It was subtle at first, but the more I watched, the clearer it became. They were flirting. Katie tossed her hair back, a playful smile dancing on her lips as she leaned closer to Max. I could see the way he leaned in, captivated by her presence, his eyes sparkling with interest. My heart raced, each beat pounding louder than the last. I felt a whirlwind of emotions crashing over me: anger, betrayal, disbelief. It was all too surreal, like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I gripped the edge of my desk, my knuckles turning white as I watched them interact. Every laugh they shared cut deeper than a knife. They spoke in hushed tones, their heads bent close together, creating a bubble around themselves that felt impenetrable. I felt like an outsider peering into a secret world where I no longer belonged. As the minutes ticked by, I felt my world unraveling. The conversation flowed effortlessly, each word laced with an undertone of flirtation. Katie playfully nudged Max, their laughter echoing through the room, and I could feel the walls closing in around me. I wanted to scream, to confront them right then and there, but I was frozen, unable to tear my eyes away from the screen. Then, in a moment that felt like a punch to the gut, I saw them move toward the bedroom. My breath caught in my throat, and I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. They stepped into our sanctuary, the place that had once felt so safe, so intimate. My heart shattered as the reality of what was happening sunk in. I watched helplessly, feeling like I was losing a part of myself. In the bedroom, the dynamic shifted. The door closed behind them, and I was left staring at the screen, unable to process what was unfolding before my eyes. They were no longer just friends. They were two people crossing a line that should have never been breached. The playful banter shifted to something deeper, something that made my stomach churn. I could see them leaning into each other, their body language betraying an intimacy I had thought was reserved for me alone. Katie touched Max's arm lightly, her fingers trailing along his skin in a way that sent jolts of pain through my heart. I felt as if the world around me was fading, collapsing under the weight of betrayal. My mind raced with anger and confusion. How could she do this to me? To us? With every moment that passed, my fury intensified. I was consumed by a primal urge to confront them, to expose the truth in the rawest form possible. But I also felt a paralyzing fear of what this meant for my life, my relationship, and my sense of self. Then came the moment that would be etched into my mind forever. I watched as Katie, with a smile that seemed to brighten the room, leaned in closer to Max, their faces mere inches apart. The laughter faded, replaced by an electric tension that hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. I could see the spark in their eyes, the way they held each other's gaze, and it became painfully clear they were crossing a line from which there was no return. Tears blurred my vision as I watched, helplessly bound to my seat, my heart shattering with each passing second. It was not just the betrayal that cut deep, it was the realization that the love I had cherished was now tainted by deception. I felt a mixture of rage and despair bubbling within me, a fierce storm that threatened to spill over. At that moment, I understood that I could no longer remain passive. I had to confront this head-on. The truth I had sought was laid bare before me, but it came at a terrible cost. The love I had once believed to be unshakable was crumbling before my eyes, and I could feel the ground beneath me shifting. As the footage continued, I felt a sense of determination rise within me. I would no longer be the victim of their betrayal. I would confront them, but I would do so on my terms. The hidden observer had transformed into a seeker of truth, ready to face the demons that lurked in the shadows of my life. In the wake of my devastating discovery, a sense of clarity emerged amidst the chaos of my emotions. Instead of succumbing to the impulsive urge to confront Katie and Max directly, I realized that I could turn this painful situation to my advantage. I wanted my revenge to be deliberate, calculated, and ultimately impactful. My plan began to take shape, an idea that thrilled me with its audacity and potential for maximum emotional fallout. The concept was simple, yet ingenious. I would host a gathering for our friends, An innocuous evening of laughter and camaraderie, but with a hidden agenda. The video I had recorded would serve as the centerpiece of my revelation, a surprise that would unveil Katie and Max's betrayal in a way that would leave no room for denial. I envisioned their shock, their humiliation, and the whirlwind of reactions that would ensue. The thought sent a rush of adrenaline through me. I could expose the truth while keeping the upper hand. Planning the evening was both a distraction and a source of excitement. I reached out to our closest friends, crafting the perfect invitation that hinted at a casual night in. "Let's get together for some food and drinks. It's been too long since we've all hung out," I wrote in the group chat, keeping my tone light and cheerful. I wanted everyone to feel comfortable and relaxed, unaware of the storm that was brewing beneath the surface. As the responses rolled in, I felt a sense of anticipation build. Each "I'm in" fueled my resolve, and I began to picture the layout of the evening in my mind. I would set the stage for the unveiling. Cozy seating, dim lighting, and the tantalizing aroma of good food wafting through the air. I wanted the atmosphere to feel inviting, a stark contrast to the explosive moment I had planned. In the days leading up to the party, I poured myself into the preparations. I wanted everything to be perfect, from the appetizers to the playlist. I chose a mix of upbeat songs that would keep the energy high, and I even picked up a few of Katie's favorite snacks to ensure she felt at ease. I needed her to be completely oblivious, blissfully unaware of what was about to unfold. I took particular care in preparing the video. It needed to feel spontaneous, almost like an unexpected trip down memory lane. I edited the footage to create a seamless narrative, cutting out mundane moments and honing in on the pivotal clips that captured Katie and Max's flirtation. I wanted to ensure that it would flow naturally, as if it were just another casual video of our lives together, without any hint of the betrayal it contained. As I worked on the editing, my emotions oscillated between anger and exhilaration. I was crafting a weapon out of a moment that had once filled me with heartbreak. Each time I reviewed the footage, I felt a surge of power. This was my chance to reclaim my narrative, to expose the truth that had been hidden from me. The video would reveal their deceit, and I would be the one to shine a light on their betrayal. I considered the timing of the reveal carefully. It had to be perfectly orchestrated, a crescendo building to the moment of exposure. I envisioned myself making a light-hearted comment about memories, casually leading into the video playback. My friends would be gathered around, drinks in hand, laughter echoing in the background, and then, bam! The truth would hit them like a freight train. As the day of the gathering approached, I meticulously arranged the seating in the living room to create an inviting space where everyone could relax. I set up the television and made sure the connections were seamless, testing everything to ensure it would go off without a hitch. I even considered lighting a few candles to add a cozy ambiance, enhancing the contrast between the warmth of the evening and the chill of the revelation that awaited. On the night of the party, I donned my best poker face. I greeted each friend with genuine warmth, pouring drinks and sharing laughter, while internally I reveled in the knowledge of the impending chaos. Katie arrived with a bright smile, completely oblivious to the storm that was brewing in the background. Watching her laugh and chat with our friends filled me with a strange sense of satisfaction. I had crafted the perfect trap, and I was just moments away from pulling the trigger. Once everyone was settled, I made sure to engage in lively conversations, keeping the mood light and carefree. I wanted to build an atmosphere of trust and enjoyment, where no one would suspect the impending reveal. I shared stories and anecdotes, highlighting the bonds we all shared, but beneath it all, I could feel my heart racing in anticipation of the moment when I would flip the narrative. Finally, the moment came when I felt the energy in the room shift. I raised my glass and cleared my throat, signaling that I had something to share. "Hey everyone," I began, my voice steady and upbeat. "Thank you all for coming tonight. It's great to have you all here. I thought it would be fun to take a little trip down memory lane, so I put together a video of some moments we've shared." I glanced at Katie, and I could see her face light up with excitement. She had no idea what was coming, and I felt a rush of exhilaration mixed with a tinge of guilt. I had taken the step into this moral gray area, but it was too late to turn back now. I was committed to seeing this plan through. As I clicked to start the video, I felt a thrill of adrenaline rush through me. The screen flickered to life, and I watched as my friends leaned in, curiosity etched on their faces. This was it, the culmination of my plan, the moment when I would reveal the truth that had been hidden in the shadows. The stage was set, and I was ready to unleash the storm I had meticulously crafted. The video began with harmless clips, scenes from past parties, group dinners, and trips we'd all taken together. Laughter bubbled up from the group, just as I had anticipated. For the first few minutes, it was everything they expected. Happy memories, shared jokes, candid moments that made everyone smile. But then, the tone of the video shifted. I edited it so that the transition would be seamless. The clips of laughter and lighthearted moments were slowly replaced with something more intimate, more personal. There on the screen was Katie, sitting on the edge of our bed, smiling in a way that I hadn't seen in months. The camera followed her as Max walked into the frame, laughing about something I couldn't hear. They looked so comfortable together, too comfortable. The laughter in the room began to die down, replaced with uneasy silence as people realized that this wasn't just a random home video. I glanced around the room, feeling the tension rise. Friends were shifting in their seats, confused expressions appearing on their faces as the footage unfolded. But it wasn't until the next clip, Katie leaning into Max, their flirtation unmistakable, that the mood in the room truly began to shift. The easy smiles on everyone's faces disappeared, replaced by growing looks of discomfort and shock. Whispers started to break out, hushed voices questioning what they were seeing. And then, it happened, the moment I had been waiting for. On the screen, Katie and Max moved even closer to each other. Their faces were inches apart, their conversation becoming quieter, more intimate. Katie laughed softly at something Max said, her hand brushing his arm in a way that was far too familiar. The final blow came when they stood up together and disappeared toward the bedroom. The door clicked shut behind them. I could feel the weight of the silence in the room now. All the air had been sucked out, and the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. I didn't even need to look at Katie or Max yet. I could feel the collective shock of everyone around me. The betrayal was laid bare for all to see, exposed in its rawest, most undeniable form. Slowly, I turned my gaze toward Katie. She sat frozen, her face pale, eyes wide with disbelief and horror as she realized what was happening. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. She looked like a deer caught in headlights, completely paralyzed by the sudden, brutal exposure of her secret. The confident, carefree woman from moments ago had vanished, replaced by someone who was terrified, ashamed, and utterly lost. Next, I turned my attention to Max. His reaction was equally satisfying. His smug expression had evaporated, replaced by a look of dawning panic. His face drained of color, and for a moment, he looked like he might be sick. He glanced around the room as if searching for some way to escape, but there was none. He was trapped, just like Katie, in the web of lies they had spun together. The rest of the room was deathly quiet. I could feel the stares of our friends, their shock, their awkward discomfort as they processed what they had just seen. No one knew what to say or how to react. The betrayal was so blatant, so raw, that it left them speechless. I could hear someone mutter under their breath, "What the hell?" I let the silence hang for a moment longer, savoring the tension, the weight of the revelation. This was my moment, the culmination of all the planning and all the pain I had endured. I wanted them to sit in that discomfort, to feel the gravity of what they had done, not just to me, but to all of us. I wanted them to understand that their betrayal had rippled out, touching everyone in this room, destroying not only my trust, but the trust of our entire circle of friends. Finally, I spoke, my voice calm but firm. "Well," I said, my eyes fixed on Katie and Max, "I thought it was time everyone saw the truth." The room remained silent, but the tension was palpable. Katie's eyes filled with tears, her face crumpling as the weight of her actions hit her full force. Max looked down, unable to meet my gaze, his hands clenched into fists on his knees. The room felt suffocating, heavy with the consequences of their deceit. I had done it. I had exposed them, not in a fit of rage or a moment of weakness, but in a calculated, controlled act of revenge. The truth was out, and now they would have to live with the fallout. As I stood there, watching their world crumble, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. The damage was done. There was no going back. The room was filled with an unbearable tension, so thick it was almost suffocating. Katie sat in stunned silence, her face drained of all color, her lips trembling as she tried to process what had just happened. I could see her eyes welling up with tears, glistening as they pooled at the corners, ready to spill over at any second. Her hands, usually so steady and composed, now shook as they rested on her lap, gripping the fabric of her dress like a lifeline. She was caught. There was no denying it now, no way to explain away what everyone had just seen. Her secret, their secret, had been laid bare for all to witness, and the shame was written all over her face. I could almost hear her thoughts, racing in a frantic attempt to figure out how to salvage the situation, how to turn this around or make it go away. But there was no escape. She was trapped in the spotlight, the center of a storm she never saw coming. I had made sure of that. Max, on the other hand, tried to recover, tried to save face. He cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes darting around the room, searching for some kind of support. But all he found were stunned, disgusted expressions. No one was going to save him. "Look, man, this isn't what it seems," he started, his voice cracking slightly as he struggled to maintain his composure. It's not what you think, okay?" A few of our friends exchanged glances, unsure whether to believe him or laugh at the absurdity of his words. And then it started, soft at first, just a stifled chuckle from the back of the room. It was Anna, one of our oldest friends, who couldn't contain herself any longer. The sound of her laughter broke the silence like glass shattering, and soon it spread. One by one, our friends began to laugh, not at a joke or a funny memory, but at the sheer ridiculousness of Max's pathetic attempt to justify the unjustifiable. Max's face flushed crimson. He opened his mouth to say something else, but the laughter only grew louder, mocking him, drowning out his feeble excuses. His bravado was crumbling before my eyes, and all that was left was a man stripped of his charm, his confidence shattered in the face of undeniable truth. He looked at me, desperation flickering in his eyes as if hoping I might come to his defense, or at least offer him some way out. But I just stood there, watching him squirm, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Katie finally broke down, the tears she had been holding back cascading down her cheeks in silent streams. Her shoulders shook, and she covered her face with her hands, trying to hide from the humiliation. But there was no hiding now. Her sobs were quiet, almost pitiful, as she sat there, utterly exposed, utterly defeated. It was as if the weight of her actions had finally come crashing down on her, and she had no idea how to handle it. This was the woman I had once loved, the woman I had trusted with every part of myself. And now, here she was, falling apart in front of everyone. The image of her betrayal etched into the minds of all our friends. I stood at the edge of the room, watching the scene unfold. A part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her it would be okay, to ease her pain, even though I knew she didn't deserve it. Another part of me felt vindicated, almost triumphant, as I saw them both crumble under the weight of their lies. This was what they deserved, wasn't it? They had betrayed me in the worst way possible, and now the world knew. The people who mattered most to us had seen the truth with their own eyes. Katie and Max had been stripped of their masks, and now they were left with nothing but their shame. But as I stood there, feeling the satisfaction of my plan unfolding perfectly, I also felt something else, something darker, more painful. It was a hollow ache, deep in my chest, as the reality of the situation truly hit me. This wasn't just about revenge. This was my life, my marriage, my best friend. Two people I had cared about more than anything, now reduced to nothing but fragments of a broken trust. The satisfaction was fleeting, overshadowed by the deeper hurt of betrayal, a wound that no amount of revenge could truly heal. As the laughter subsided, the room fell into an uncomfortable silence again. No one knew what to say, no one dared to speak. All eyes were on Katie and Max, their humiliation hanging in the air like a dark cloud. Katie looked up at me, her tear-streaked face full of despair, as if begging for some kind of forgiveness or understanding. But I had none to give. Max sat there, slumped and defeated, staring at the floor. His attempt to regain control had failed miserably, and now he was left to sit in the wreckage of what he had done. He opened his mouth to speak again, but this time, no words came out. He knew there was nothing left to say. The silence in the room was oppressive, and I could feel the eyes of our friends shifting from Katie and Max back to me, waiting to see what I would do next. But I didn't move. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, my mind a whirlwind of emotion, satisfaction, sadness, anger, and an overwhelming sense of loss. The people I thought I knew were gone, replaced by these hollow, broken figures before me. And though I had orchestrated this moment of humiliation, though I had gotten the revenge I thought I wanted, the victory felt hollow. Katie's sobs grew quieter, and she wiped her face with trembling hands. She didn't try to speak, didn't try to defend herself anymore. There was nothing left to say. The damage was done. The apartment felt unnaturally quiet now. The echo of footsteps, laughter, and whispers from the night's chaos had long since faded. I stood in the living room, staring at the space where the party had unfolded just hours earlier, but it felt like a lifetime ago. The silence was deafening. The echoes of what had transpired still lingered in the air, heavy and suffocating. I walked over to the couch, the same one where Katie and Max had sat so comfortably earlier that evening. Completely unaware of the storm that was about to break. Now, that same space felt alien to me, like a relic from a life I no longer recognized. The apartment, once filled with warmth and memories, now felt cold and foreign. This place had been my home, our home, but after tonight, it was nothing more than an empty shell, a place where trust had been shattered, where love had been betrayed. I sank onto the couch, leaning forward, my elbows resting on my knees as I stared at the floor. My mind was a blur, filled with the events of the evening playing on a loop. I had done it. I followed through with my plan, exposed Katie and Max for the liars they were, and humiliated them in front of everyone. It was supposed to feel like victory. It was supposed to give me some kind of closure, some sense of justice. But instead, all I felt was a hollow emptiness, an aching void that no amount of revenge could fill. I thought back to the look on Katie's face, the way her eyes had filled with tears as the realization of her actions hit her, the way her shoulders had slumped, her spirit crushed beneath the weight of her guilt and shame. I had seen her at her lowest, her most vulnerable, and yet there was no satisfaction in that. The woman I had loved, the woman I had built a life with, was now nothing more than a stranger to me. I had wanted her to feel the same pain she had caused me, and maybe she did, but watching her break down didn't heal the wound she had left in my heart. Max. Max had been my best friend, the person I had trusted more than anyone. How could he have done this? The thought of it still gnawed at me, like a festering wound that refused to close. His weak attempts at excuses, his desperate, stammering explanations, they had all been for nothing. He had destroyed our friendship with his betrayal, and now, like Katie, he was gone from my life. I had severed the ties that once connected us, but in doing so, I had also severed a part of myself. The part that believed in trust, in loyalty, in friendship. I leaned back into the couch, staring up at the ceiling, my chest heavy with the weight of it all. Katie was gone. Max was gone. The friends who had been here earlier, who had witnessed the spectacle, would never look at us the same way again. The laughter, the shared memories, it all felt tainted now, polluted by the truth that had come to light. I had lost so much more than just a wife and a friend tonight. I had lost a part of my life, a part of myself that I wasn't sure I could ever get back. The apartment felt emptier than ever, and so did I. Katie would never come back here. I could feel it in the hollow space she had left behind. After what happened, she would never face me again. I had taken everything from her, her reputation, her pride, her relationship with Max. In a single night, she had lost both me and the man she had betrayed me with. But in the end, what had I gained? Yes, she was gone. Yes, Max was no longer a part of my life, but all that left me with was this silence, this emptiness that stretched out endlessly before me. I had won the battle, but at what cost? I stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the dark city below. The lights flickered in the distance, life carrying on as if nothing had happened. But for me, everything had changed. My world, the life I had built, had crumbled in the span of one evening. I had orchestrated this moment and planned it meticulously, but now that it was over, there was no sense of victory, no feeling of triumph. All that was left was the reality that I was alone, standing in an empty apartment, with nothing but the memories of what used to be. Katie had made her choice, and so had I. There was no going back now. The damage was irreparable. Even if she tried to apologize, tried to explain, it wouldn't matter. The trust was gone, shattered beyond repair. She had lost me the moment she had chosen to betray me. And as much as it hurt, as much as the weight of that loss pressed down on me, I knew it was final. Max. He was another story, a friend who had turned out to be a traitor. His betrayal cut deep, perhaps even deeper than Katie's. He had been like a brother to me, someone I had confided in and trusted with my deepest thoughts and insecurities. And yet, he had been the one to plunge the knife into my back. There was no recovering from that, no mending the wounds he had caused. He too was gone from my life, leaving behind only the bitter taste of betrayal. The apartment, once filled with laughter and life, now felt like a tomb. The memories of happier times haunted every corner, every piece of furniture, every photograph on the wall. I could still see us, me, Katie, and Max, laughing, sharing meals, spending time together. But those memories were tainted now, forever overshadowed by the truth I had uncovered. They were ghosts of a life that no longer existed. As I stood there, staring out at the city, I realized that revenge hadn't given me what I thought it would. It hadn't brought me peace or closure. It hadn't healed the pain of betrayal. If anything, it had deepened the wound and made the emptiness more profound. I had wanted them to hurt, to feel the same anguish I had felt, and maybe they did. But in the end, all it had done was leave me alone in the wreckage of what was once my life. Katie had lost everything, me, Max, her dignity, and I too had lost. I had lost a marriage, a friendship, and a part of myself. We were all broken now, each in our own way. The only difference was I was the one left standing in the aftermath, along with the consequences of it all. I closed my eyes and let out a long, heavy breath. The revenge had been sweet for a moment, but now all I felt was the weight of loss, pressing down on me like an anchor pulling me under. Over time, the heaviness that once filled the apartment began to lift. The silence that had once felt oppressive slowly transformed into something more peaceful, something that allowed me to reflect and rebuild. Day by day, I began to piece my life back together, starting with the small things, new routines, reconnecting with old friends, and focusing on myself in ways I hadn't done in years. The bitterness and anger that had consumed me eventually gave way to acceptance. I couldn't change the past, but I could shape my future, and with that realization, a sense of calm settled over me. Months turned into years, and as time went on, I found new reasons to smile, new passions to pursue, and even new people to let into my life. The wounds of betrayal didn't disappear overnight, but they healed, leaving behind scars that reminded me of my strength. I discovered that life, despite the pain, has a way of surprising you. It wasn't the life I had once imagined, but it was mine, and it was good again. Slowly but surely I had moved on, and in doing so, I found a deeper sense of peace and purpose than I had ever known.